I wanted to, as we are moving into our topic for this week, we need to make sure to clarify some terms so that when we are using certain words, we are all meaning the same thing. Because if we're using different words to mean the same thing, or the same word to mean different things, that impedes our ability to make an effective academic argument. So right along with this video, I have posted this infographic that I love. This is called The Genderbread Person, and this is like the third volume of this, or not volume, but version. So if you Google this, you may see some other versions that look different. And as we're looking at LGBT community, the queer community, there's a lot of different ways that people can identify to be part of this group or not. And if this is old news for you, bear with us. And if there's anything else that you would like to add to this discussion, certainly make sure to let me know. So when you look at this infographic, you see looks like a gingerbread man, right? But it's the genderbread person. And you see that there's 4 different ways that we express who we are. So we have, if we just look at the biological sex right there at the groin, this is looking at our biology, our chromosomes, our hormones, our anatomy. Historically, when we would use the word sex or gender, it meant the same thing, right? So we would say, oh, well, he's a man. We meant that he was biologically a man, that he was mentally a man, he was socially a man. These all meant the same thing. But as we are striving for more accuracy, we're seeing that there's far more variation. And some people find that very freeing, and some people find that very threatening and scary. But that's where we're at in the historical evolution of this topic. So if we just look at biological sex, and it's got that purple box, this is looking at the maleness or the femaleness. Now, one of the things that is quite often not addressed at all anywhere is our intersex community. So people can be biologically intersex. It's as frequent as 1% of the population. So it's as common as having natural red hair. That's how many intersex people we have walking around. So some people don't know that they're intersex. One of my friends, she was 18 and hadn't started menstruating, and so her mom took her to the doctor, and they found that she was intersex. She had androgen insensitivity syndrome. So biologically, she is an XY chromosome. So in our anatomy classes or our biology classes, we learn that XX equals these kind of genitals, XY equals these kind of genitals. Well, my friend is XY, but her body didn't respond to or produce the sex hormones, and so she was born with a vagina. She wasn't born with ovaries and a uterus, which is why she wasn't menstruating, but she had testicles up inside where her ovaries would be. So when we look at somebody like her, the outside of her body looks female. She identifies mentally as female and lives in the world as a female. Genetically, she's XY. So if she commits a crime and they get her DNA, they're going to be looking for a man, right? So biological sex isn't clearly male and female. There's a whole bunch in the middle. Some people are born XXY. They have 3. Or some people have mosaic chromosomes where some of their cells are XX and some of their cells are XY. So how do we categorize people? We shouldn't. Biological sex is not just a binary. Well, you're born male or female. God makes you male or female. That's inaccurate. There's a whole bunch of folks in the middle. So what about folks who are XX and they have a female-looking body, but their hormone levels are in the male range? They produce huge amounts of testosterone. So hormonally, they look like they're male, right? So biological sex is not just male or female. So if you're going to make an argument about any of these things, you have to make sure that you are being accurate, and you don't fall into the misconception that, well, you're either made male or female. What do we do with people who are in the middle? Do we just forget that God made them that way too? You have to acknowledge the intersex community in this discussion. So there's our biological sex. If we look at the brain, this is our mental gender. One thing we have to make sure is that when we're talking about gender, when we use that word, we're talking about our mental way to identify. We're not talking about our genitals. Those can be changed. Those can be different than our mental gender, right? So if we use the word cisgender, C-I-S, that's saying that the sex that you were assigned at birth coincides with what your mental gender is. So my friend Stephanie was born. They saw the baby had a vagina. They said, it's a girl. She was assigned female at birth. Well, even though she's intersex, she's cisgender because she mentally identifies as a woman. Some people who are transgender, the child's born, we say that's a penis, this is a boy, and then, but they don't identify socially, mentally, spiritually, emotionally as a male. They identify as something else. So if you're using the word sex, we're talking about physical, biological, chromosomes, hormones, anatomy. When we use the word gender, we're talking about our mental way that we identify and live in the world. These are two different things. Historically, when you read things, we use the words interchangeably. They meant the same thing. They do not any longer. When we look at the heart, that's our attraction. Those are the people that we are romantically attracted to, the people that we're sexually attracted to. And so if you look at the bottom, one thing that I like about this genderbread infographic is that it separates out who we're sexually attracted to and who we're romantically attracted to. Because some people identify as aromantic or asexual, saying that they can't fall in love, or that they're not sexually attracted to anybody. But these are different. A friend of mine identifies as panromantic homosexual. So he says, I can fall in love with anybody. I don't care their gender or their body. I can fall in love with anybody, but I'm only sexually attracted to male bodies. And so these can be different. And also, if you look at this includes nobody. So this includes the asexual and the aromantic people. But also on this spectrum, it shows women, females, or femininity. So you may be attracted to and fall in love with people who are feminine, regardless of their body or the way they identify. A feminine man, somebody who's non-binary and feminine, somebody who's intersex and feminine. Maybe you're just attracted to the femininity or attracted to the masculinity, or you fall in love with masculinity, regardless of what type of body or gender identity it's on. So those are separated out. And then on the outside, we see the dashed mark all the way around the outside. This is our gender expression. This is how we express our identity and who we are on the outside of our body. So this is, do we have long hair? Do we wear masculine clothes? Do we have piercings? What kind of piercings? Our tattoos, our makeup, how we sit in a chair, what color ink we use in our pens. Gender is a powerful force. To where, people can be beaten up for wearing the wrong color shirt. Or people can be bullied for sitting in a chair with their legs crossed versus their legs spraddled out. So that our gender expression is the outside of our body. So one thing that you may want to look at is, so if people have a certain gender expression, we assume certain things about them. So if you see somebody who appears to be female sex, right? They're small, they don't have facial hair, they have breasts, but they have a really masculine gender expression. They're wearing boys' clothes and sitting and acting in very masculine ways. We might assume things about their gender identity and say, oh, they're a transgender man. But that may not be right. Or we may assume things about their attraction to say, oh, well, she must be gay, she must be queer somehow. And she might be the straightest person you ever met, but with a masculine gender expression on the outside. So when we talk about all these things, we have to be very careful that we're using the appropriate word. that we're talking about the biological sex, or are we talking about the gender identity? Are we talking about who people are attracted to? Are we talking about the outside gender expression? Because all of these things are very different. And as you can see on this infographic, that they're very, they're all on a continuum. They're all on a spectrum that you can have. You can be people who want to say that their gender is that they're bigender, that they're not strictly male or female, that they're a mix of both, that they fluctuate back and forth, or maybe they have a gender. They're like, I don't have any gender, or they're non-binary. I'm not a male or a female. I'm not a man or a woman. I'm something else. So come back to this and make sure that we're all using the appropriate terminology when we're discussing these things. So, because we want to make sure our ideas are coming across clearly, and we don't want there to be any confusion. So, let me know what kind of questions you have or comments. If you want to add anything to the discussion, let me know, and I can post it or share it with the class.